The top assassin, while in the middle of carrying out a mission, had his view partially obscured by a beautiful woman. His professional instinct urged him to use his sniper scope to relocate his target, yet his inherently gentlemanly nature compelled him to steal one more glance. He realized that this woman would affect his shooting speed, so he decided to take one final look. With his heart rate at 65, his peak shooting condition, he firmly gripped his gun, the round already chambered. He was determined to keep this operation under control. After all, he had never failed in his 249 previous targets. Success in this mission would elevate his career to new heights. Once his scope had locked onto the target's head, he confidently pulled the trigger, but unexpectedly, the bullet was deflected by that beautiful woman. He prepared to fire another shot immediately, yet the group of bodyguards on the other side had already drawn the window curtains, completely denying him a second opportunity. The mission was declared a failure. His extraordinary intuition warned him that he shouldn't linger here, so he quickly gathered his gear. Then, before the police arrived, he hopped on his beloved motorbike, discarded his extra ammunition and equipment, and weaved through narrow streets to escape the police pursuit. Next, when no one was paying attention, he tossed his helmet into the river and walked to the restroom of a convenience store. With a composed air, he wiped off the cold sweat from his body. As a perfectionist, he even shaved and changed into a new set of clothes, meticulously applying cologne to mask his natural scent. Then, he flagged down a passing taxi and headed straight to the airport. At the terminal gate, he discarded his last gun. However calm he might have been, the strict security at the airport still made him uneasy. If even the slightest trace of his identity were detected, all his previous efforts would be in vain. After exchanging glances with someone, Keller cautiously looked around to see that no one was paying attention, then silently left. Being a person who always controlled every detail, he decided to wash his hands another 10 times. Next, using a false identity, he purchased an airline ticket which allowed him to smoothly pass through security. He then reported the mission's failure to his superior. The boss reassured him that it wasn't a major issue and that the company would quickly resolve it. Only then did Keller feel at ease enough to hang up his phone. Afterward, he went to the restroom, removed his SIM card, threw his phone to the ground, and smashed it. Soon after, he managed to board the plane. But even before he was completely safe, his guard remained at its highest. Sure enough, a man in a black suit and dark sunglasses immediately set off his instincts as masterful. Intuition warned him that this man was at least 90% trouble. As fate would have it, while transferring flights, he encountered the same man at the ticket counter. In the waiting lounge, the man in the black suit happened to be sitting there. Those blue-black striped socks were the very combination Keller despised most. He decided without hesitation to cancel this flight and, again using a false identity, purchased another ticket for the next day to Santo Domingo. At the hotel, Keller made a secret call. However, his purpose was not to eat. Once the service staff left, he immediately locked his room, grabbed his food container and a glass, and moved toward the door. Carefully, he set the glass near the door handle and placed the food container down. This way, if anyone broke in, he would be able to react instantly. He then placed his dinner knife beside it, finally allowing him a moment of peace. Fortunately, during a quiet, uneventful night, he vigilantly scanned his surroundings until he was sure no one was watching. Then he leisurely departed. Keller enjoyed using music to soothe his frayed nerves. He reached his destination smoothly and found the Jeep he had bought last year. Beginning his journey home, even upon arriving home, he continuously changed his route, driving through bustling neighborhoods, venturing into rural areas, and crossing a stretch of pristine blue sea. Along the roadside, trees swayed gently in the wind, and Keller felt an overwhelming sense of calm. After traversing more than half the city, Keller finally arrived at his suburban villa. Just as he was about to use his fingerprint lock, a pair of size 42 thick footprints on the ground startled him. Could it be that someone has come uninvited? He immediately scrambled into his car, grabbed his self-defense gun, loaded it, and raced toward the house. Using the dense forest to conceal his movements, he ran while discreetly observing the activity inside. At the edge of the woods, he discovered footprints. This only confirmed his suspicions. He lowered himself and swiftly approached the house, cautiously inspecting every corner. However, while conducting a thorough search, he found no sign of any person. Yet, broken furniture and bloodstains on the walls clearly indicated that a scuffle had taken place. One that appeared to be a brutal, bare-handed fight. Suddenly, Keller thought of his wife. He hurriedly called her and learned that she had been hospitalized, her entire body covered in wounds and in critical condition. His wife told him that the attackers were a man and a woman who had no intention of letting anyone survive. Fortunately, her sister had managed to fend off the attacker with a shard of broken glass, thereby saving her life. After the man was injured, her sister and some accomplices helped her escape in a green taxi with a light on its roof. At that point, his wife could no longer contain her grief and anger. "I will never let this happen again." Shortly afterward, he rushed back to the yard in a frenzy. It turned out that there was another secret hideout underneath, filled with his most familiar equipment. Once he had prepared everything, he donned Liu Nang's hat and gracefully stood up. In the days that followed, Keller roamed the streets, constantly watching for any green taxis like the one he was looking for. Yet, he still couldn't find the specific one he desired. This, however, did not trouble him. He proceeded directly to the airport. Sure enough, he found a green taxi waiting at the terminal. Later that night, he made his way to the green taxi company, pretending to be a beggar, pleading with the attendant to open the door. As soon as the door opened, Keller immediately brandished his gun. He checked the passenger list and found an invoice indicating a destination. The information revealed that the driver's name was Leo. Then, by examining the driver's details, he found a photo of a man named Leo. With his objective achieved, he deliberately staged the scene to resemble a burglary, then calmly shut down his computer and left. At dawn, he had already been waiting at the taxi company's gate. "This is the only route taxi drivers take every day," he mused. Soon enough, he spotted a young man selling instant noodles. This was the Leo he was looking for. Keller trailed Leo to the passenger pickup area and then pretended to be a tourist, seeking a ride from Leo. Once the taxi left the city center, Keller drew his gun. Leo fired in panic, thinking he was being robbed, and obediently handed over his wallet. Keller questioned him about a deal from 3 days ago. Leo replied that he had forgotten all about it. Keller urged him to recall every detail. In a life-or-death moment, Leo's memory suddenly returned. 3 days ago, two bizarre individuals, one man and one woman, were in your car. The man looked like a towering, muscular brute with a vicious demeanor, while the woman resembled a delicate flower. Keller pressed him to remember every detail of what had happened along the way. Leo explained, "They only told me to drive deep into the forest until we reached a secluded house." The woman, nicknamed Tam Beng, told Leo to wait outside until about an hour later, when these two oddballs finally emerged. Moreover, the muscular man's thigh was covered in blood. Tam Beng instructed Leo to drive them back to the airport, after which Leo left. Keller then told Leo to drive under the bridge. Leo kept flattering him. Keller handed him a cigarette and assured him that not a word would be revealed. Leo could leave the car and his money, pleading only for Keller to spare his life. But the compassion for others was, for Keller, the greatest cruelty toward oneself. Without hesitation, Keller decisively shot Leo, then calmly wiped his fingerprints off, pretending he had never killed anyone, and took his radio before departing. Feeling that it was time to meet his boss, Keller used a new identity to book a flight to New Orleans. As soon as he got off the plane, he hired a truck to drive him to his secret warehouse. He owned as many as 600 warehouses across the country, each a small armory. He selected his most familiar items, retrieved a fake license plate from his cabinet, and slapped it onto a car with a firm tap. Then, he went to a metal shop to order a set of high-end cleaning supplies. Next, while simultaneously eating a banana and keeping an eye on his boss's house, Keller observed that the building still used a network of surveillance cameras, and that its locks were the outdated type from the 1980s. Such obsolete devices were trivial matters to him. Very soon, an opportunity presented itself. A courier truck abruptly stopped in front of the building. While the delivery person was calling at the door, Keller lugged a trash can along. He donned a pair of black gloves right in front of the courier. Surely, it was the first time the courier had seen a trash collector wearing black gloves. Before anyone could think twice, the elevator arrived, and as the delivery person stepped out, Keller tailed him, pretending to check the building's directory while secretly counting down the seconds until the door closed. 7 seconds later, when the door shut, he silently approached the entrance. Inside, a woman, his boss's secretary, was present. Seeing that the courier was about to leave, Keller pretended to stoop down to drink some water. As the door was about to close, Keller quickly blocked it with his foot, pulled out the equipment from the trash, and strode in. When the secretary recognized Keller, she was so frightened that she froze. Keller grabbed her computer and phone, and told her, "Don't be afraid, my target is not you." His boss, who had started to speak, saw Keller enter with his gun, but after a moment of shock, the boss quickly regained his composure. Pretending to be worried, the boss asked, Why would you risk exposing yourself here? Yet Keller completely disregarded the boss's and the secretary's words. The boss truly couldn't understand where he had incurred Keller's wrath. It must have been some kind of misunderstanding. Keller then ordered both the secretary and the boss to keep silent. The secretary obeyed, while the boss assured her not to worry. Keller left a small gap in the door to keep watch and told the boss that he had already returned home. The boss replied, "The failed mission is beyond my control. It's not that important. If an assassin fails to complete a mission, he must pay a commensurate price. That's only fair. But today, Keller, you are here to kill." Yet the boss still clung to some delusional hope for a peaceful solution. Over the years, Keller had amassed an extravagant fortune, much of which was earned through his boss's orders. His boss suggested that Keller change his identity and relocate to the other side of the globe to enjoy the rest of his life. In that way, he could leave all this behind. But Keller now only wanted to find the culprit who had harmed his wife. He demanded that his boss hand over the information on these two individuals. "All the data I processed was stored in these two laptops. That's it." Keller was in no mood to listen to any more nonsense. He directly drove 3 iron spikes into his boss's chest. With such wounds, a middle-aged non-smoker could only endure for about 60 to 70 minutes. Then, Keller placed a pre-programmed emergency call in front of his boss, who nonetheless kept silent like a mute. To avoid staining the floor with blood, Keller even carefully spread a newspaper under his boss. Unexpectedly, having smoked for many years and being well past his prime, his boss could barely hold on even for half a minute. He died on the spot. Keller was forced to push the trash can into the room, close the window curtains, turn off the lights, and then begin processing the secretary. The secretary said, "I know where those two are." In return, "I want Keller to give me a chance at a new life, because I still have children to raise." Keller hesitated, but his hardened assassin instincts told him not to be soft-hearted. After a brief pause, he undressed the secretary. When she saw that her boss was cold and lifeless, she fainted on the spot. Yet Keller was indifferent to her. He used a newspaper to cover his boss's head, dragged the trash can over, and stuffed his boss inside. Then, he systematically cleaned the crime scene and took the secretary away. The next stop was the secretary's house. Along the way, she repeatedly insisted that she was a good person. But whether she was good or bad didn't matter to Keller at all. They quickly arrived at her home. Under her guidance, Keller found a card with her address on it. On the back of the card were 2 bank account numbers, and the account holder was the person Keller was looking for. Through these 2 numbers, he found a piece of paper bearing the name Cliburn. This Cliburn was the client his boss had mentioned. The secretary claimed, "Now that Keller has what he wants, I'll be safe." Suddenly, Keller attacked, causing the secretary to tumble down the stairs. Keller orchestrated a perfect death by fall scene, but disposing of his boss's body turned out to be a heavy task. Keller transported the boss to his warehouse. Anyone familiar with file sharing would know that Keller risked his life to complete his tasks. Then he drove to the port, and when no one was watching, he dumped his boss's skull into the sea. After that, he thoroughly cleaned the truck, removed the fake license plate, and discarded it in the trash. Then, as if by magic, the truck was returned to its place. Thus, the perfect assassination was complete. Next, he used a false identity to rent a vehicle from another company. Following the map's directions, he located the first address listed on the card. Experienced hitmen all know that reconnoitering the target's environment is of paramount importance. Once he was confident of the situation, Keller immediately drove to a supermarket, bought 10 pounds of beef, 1 pound of sleeping pills, and a bottle of malt beer. Then returned to the target location. At 3 a.m. when everyone was fast asleep, Keller, eyes closed to rest, slowly approached the fence. As he neared, a pit bull began barking, but Keller was already prepared. He threw the beef mixed with sleeping pills into the yard. The pit bull fell for the bait, grabbed the meat, and ran back to its kennel to eat it alone. Keller patiently waited until the pills took effect. Then he sneaked into the yard. Meanwhile, the pit bull lay as if dead. Only then, reassured, did he quietly draw his gun and enter the house, cautiously searching every nook and cranny as per his plan. In the final room he checked, a towering, muscular man suddenly burst out from behind. Keller's gun was snatched away as he cowered. Overwhelmed by the brute's strength, Keller was beaten into a daze, repeatedly regaining consciousness in a state of shock. His resilience was as remarkable as Naruto's, though he was repeatedly knocked down. He was always expected to rise again only to be crushed once more. But the turning point was imminent. The brute seized a metal rod and thrust it forcefully into his own chest, immediately impaling his aorta. However, even so, the muscular man was still a thug. He snatched the rod back and continued throwing it at Keller without mercy. Seizing the opportunity, Keller tripped the brute with his leg and took cover behind the kitchen counter, narrowly evading the incoming bullet. Then, he stealthily crept into the master bedroom and charged directly into the room where his gun had been dropped. The bloody brute, drenched in blood that had soaked into his lower body, thereby affecting his fertility, stumbled toward the door. At that moment, Keller also discovered a handgun tucked under the bed. Without hesitation, he fired a shot that shattered the brute's head. The loud commotion woke the sleeping old pitbull, which resolutely refused to share its sleep with anyone who disturbed it. Keller, limping on 3 legs and 4 limbs, slammed the metal door shut before it could bite him. Afterward, he grabbed a bottle of malt beer, ignited a lighter, and with astonishing arm strength, hurled it into the house. This time, he didn't even need to bother with disposing of the body. Barely recovering from his wounds, he hurried off to look for Tam Bang. Following his usual protocol, he rented a car under a false identity and drove to the second address on the card. He took an ibuprofen pill beforehand and waited until darkness fell. Then, a slender woman emerged just as Leo had described. She indeed looked like a delicate flower. Like a ghost, he tailed Tam Bang's car. At an intersection, he intended to take advantage of a red light to eliminate her. But upon seeing her stunning beauty, he couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger. So he continued following her until she reached a sheltered dockside restaurant. Tam Bang was enjoying a sumptuous dinner when Keller decided to strike. It is well known that when a woman is killed, the prime suspect is usually her husband or boyfriend, especially when the victim has not been violated. Keller sat down across from Tam Bang. When she saw the gun in his hand, she immediately realized that the brute had likely gone to heaven. Tam Bang pleaded, "Keller, please allow me one last dinner," and Keller, in a good mood, agreed. She explained that her boyfriend's affairs had nothing to do with her. "I tried very hard to warn that brute 3 days ago, but he wouldn't listen. Moreover, our work is not about personal grudges. Sometimes we must deal with innocent people who obstruct our path to the prize." Yet Keller paid no heed to her explanation. He silently listened as Tam Bang recounted her story. "I promised myself that there are some things I would never do. I said I'd earn enough money to rebuild my life. You know that was all a lie." After satisfying her hunger, Keller told Tam Bang to choose a place where she could rest forever. Tam Bang chose a spot by a lake. As she descended the stairs, she accidentally slipped and pleaded, "Please, Keller, be kind and help me." But Keller, without hesitation, ended her life. A professional hitman has no room for compassion. Kindness towards others is, in his eyes, the greatest cruelty to oneself, especially when it comes to beautiful women. Next came Cliburn. After the boss's initial outburst, he sought Glibor's information on a dating website. Finding a big shot boss like that is easy. The flashy license plate he saw belonged to Glibor's car. Keller used an unscrupulous map to plot a walking route and sneaked into the garage before the door closed. However, the door had a high-end lock unknown to him. Keller took a picture of the lock with his phone, then purchased an electronic key duplicator from Amazon and left. Today's plan wasn't to kill, but to make money. He transferred all of his loose change into an account in the Caribbean region. It was time to say goodbye to this country. Afterwards, he went to a local dumping ground. Introduced enthusiastically by his boss, he chose a Glock because he already had the proper silencer. After paying, his boss wanted to continue selling ammunition, but Keller politely declined. Next, he went to a distribution center to pick up a package. The key duplicator had arrived. It was time to showcase his real skills. Then, he used a false identity to register for a gym membership, sneaking his access card past the cleaning staff, although he had to retrieve the cocaine that the staff had hooked onto his jacket. Keller, ever the lone wolf, apologized as if he didn't even know them. When he reached the changing room, Cliburn was in the midst of changing. After Cliburn left, Keller used his access card to break into the wardrobe, rifled through Glibor's belongings, found his home access card, and spent some time duplicating it with a key copier. Then, he changed his clothes and naturally returned the card to its proper place. Later that evening, as the delivery personnel arrived, he again sneaked into the garage, this time. Well familiar with the route, using the duplicated card, he unlocked a room. Now he felt no fear, even in front of the surveillance cameras. He pulled out his gun, smashed through the door, and stormed in, finding Cliburn on the phone with his friends. Keller appeared right in front of him. At Keller's command, Cliburn ended the call. Then, Keller said, "I'll take any amount of money as long as you don't harm anyone." but he was determined never to invest in the world's safest apartment again next year. Keller had no interest in listening to any more nonsense. He pointed his gun at Cliburn and said, "I'm here so you know just how easy it is to get to you." "What grievance do we have?" asked Cliburn. CBON quickly replied, "I don't even know you. I have no quarrel with you." Keller then took out the card with Cliburn's address. At that moment, Cliburn recalled, "So, after that failed mission, I received a call from my old boss." His old boss had told him that everything had fallen apart. Keller simply asked, normally, "How should we handle this situation?" His old boss replied that he should get additional insurance policy that could help him clean up the mess. But Cliburn didn't want any adverse consequences, so he added a fee of $150 in local currency for handling the aftermath, then forgot all about it. Only when he reappeared did he remember this matter. At that point, Cliburn emphasized, "I absolutely have no grudge against you." Keller also realized that all these events had been orchestrated by his old boss from the shadows. That old man, aside from paying up, really didn't know anything else, but Keller still warned Cliburn, "Never try to piss me off again, or I guarantee you'll be sent straight to the underworld." Cliburn stood there dumbfounded with an innocent look, but fortunately, he wasn't immediately dragged to the underworld. Afterwards, Keller tore the card in the elevator and carelessly tossed the pieces onto the street. This concludes the Leo rank-style vendetta. From then on, Keller washed his hands, hung up his dagger, and returned to his home in Dominica with his wife, both of them now recovering and enjoying a hard-won peaceful life. The value of a film lies in its reputation, and the value of a film review lies in the viewer's perception. That concludes today's story. Thank you for watching the film. What do you think of this movie?